Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, New Haven. We're awake? Isn't this fantastic? This has been pretty amazing to see Irving Laszlo and the previous, the gentleman that presented earlier. What was his name? Tom. That was fascinating. That was fascinating to, opposite paradigms. I think this is part of what this is about. Be able to have dialogue, adult dialogue, without people pulling their hair out, and be able to have a conversation. Right? And so, whether or not it changes, I think research shows that the more intelligent a person is, the more difficult it is to shift their opinion. So I always thought that that's really good. So listen, here we are. When I saw that I only had 20 minutes, I was slightly flummoxed because I said, how can I give the audience a meaningful experience for what I want to do in 20 minutes? That would be very time compressed. So as Leslie knows, from the past, I have a habit of putting too much information in my PowerPoints, and so I have a marketing friend. When she saw my PowerPoint, I think the last one was 151 slides, she goes, Bob, nobody can process this. I said, oh, the scholar people love this, right? So, in any event, so this talk, what I originally wanted to do was a part 1 and part 2, which was going to give you like a left hemisphere approach, and I was going to cover the neurobiology, the psychophysiology, the immunology, and behavioral aspects of grief and grief recovery. However, since I only have 18 minutes now, I figured that you're going to see during the 2 days many PowerPoints. So if I didn't show you a PowerPoint, you'd be okay with that. And if I see it, anybody here ever hear of the show I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change?
Yes.
You ever see that? And the show opens, and what happens is this corporate woman comes out and then she says, I'm busy. Can we just skip from the blind date right to the second date? And so it's about how to time compress stuff. And then the guy eventually says, well, why don't we just skip right to the break? Right? And so that's what I'm going to do here.
Turn on the lights?
Yeah, you can turn on the lights. That'll be fine. Okay, very good. So what I want to do is give you something that's meaningful so that when I've gone to conferences or workshops, and I look back, retrospectively, and I say, what do I remember? You go on vacation for a week, what do you remember? What do you take out? So I want my talk, this 16 minutes that I have left with you, to be memorable. Okay? So what I'm going to do is ask this question. Speaking on the topic of grief, and so how many people in this room have ever grieved deeply, just a show of hands, lost a close loved one, a beloved pet, had your house foreclosed, your car repossessed, just a show of hands. And so you see me, I have both hands up, and I have both hands up because the work that I ended up doing at CIS was totally unexpected because my dissertation was about how to recover from the death of my mother who died at 9 years old. It took me 40 years to recover because I didn't get any therapy. And I'll just a brief quick story, which is 2 weeks after, because my father was grieving so deeply, 2 weeks after my mother died, you have to picture this, I'm 9 years old, he told family members, come over and take what you want. Within 2 weeks, there was no evidence that my mother had ever lived with her, and no one in my extended family mentioned her name. Wow. Again, except for maybe her one sister. And so I did not realize that all those years I was dealing with the sense of abandonment, the existential grief, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, what I want to share with you is the part 2 that I was going to do, which is what I call the plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Everybody wants things fast, right? So, people are familiar with dissolving stress, dissolving anxiety, dissolving chronic pain. But I designed just for this experience a custom exercise that can help people begin to dissolve grief. So the technique, I have many techniques that help people dissolve grief, but what I'm going to do here today is use a technique called open focus. Open focus is a high-level stress management technique that was developed by a guy named Dr. Les Femi out of the Princeton Biofeedback Center. It derived out of neurofeedback and biofeedback. And what he discovered after working with clients over many years was that the state of relaxation and pain relief, the maximum state of pain relief and stress and anxiety reduction that was achieved with equipment could be achieved without equipment. And he called that open focus. So Les Femi was on my doctoral committee, and we're good friends, and so, you know, I want to share this technique with you. And this is a technique that this particular technique I developed just for this situation. All right. So now the way open focus works is that I'm going to ask a series of questions, and there's going to be a pause of approximately 10 seconds to 15 seconds between questions. And you are not going to do anything. You just allow your mind and body to do whatever it wants to do. So for example, I'm going to ask the question, can you imagine the space inside of your mouth? And then you just allow yourself to just imagine that. And then I'll ask another question, which would be something like, can you imagine the distance between your hands? And so I don't want you to try to say, oh, there's 18 inches between my hands. Just get a sense of the space that would be between your hands and your feet, etc. Okay? So the research shows, I think everybody in this group knows that when you close your eyes, you tend to generate, most people, alpha brainwaves, which is like when you're daydreaming in class, etc. So for this is really good. So if people will play along with me and just close your eyes and when I start. All right, so right before I start, I'm going to ask you this question. On a scale of 0 to 10, what I would like you to do is think about whatever grief you have, and 0 being no grief, and 10 being maximum grief, the unbearable grief, just horrible thing. Because when a person is really grieving deeply, especially complicated grieving, it's the type of thing, it shatters your life, and your life is never the same afterwards. To use Leslie's term, you've experienced a catastrophic bifurcation. I try to stay, I'm going to stay on the right brain side, so I'm going to use terms like that. Okay, so if you would just get a sense of whatever grief memory you have, and just make a note on a scale of 0 to 10 where that grief memory is. Okay, 10 would be like unbelievable, you can't get up off the floor. 0 means you have no grief. Okay, so and then when we finish, I just want you to observe the shift. All right? Okay, so take a moment now to relax your posture, and when you're ready, please close your eyes. Can you imagine the space inside of your mouth? Is it possible for you to imagine that as you inhale naturally, your body begins to fill with space? And equally and simultaneously, can you imagine that as you exhale naturally, your body is left filled with space, surrounded by space, permeated by space, right where you are? Can you imagine the space inside of your left nostril? And as you become aware of that space, is it possible for you to equally and simultaneously imagine the distance between the space inside of your left nostril and the tip of your chin? Can you imagine the space between your thumb and forefinger on your left hand? And as you become aware of that space, can you also imagine the distance between that space and the space between the toes of your right foot? Can you imagine that you can become aware of and get a sense of your grief wherever it's located, whether it's located in your body or someplace outside of your body? Just get a sense of the space in which your grief resides. Can you imagine that now that you have a sense of where your grief is located, is it possible for you to imagine the thickness, the color, the breadth, the width, and the depth of the space in which your grief is located? Can you imagine getting a sense that you can approach the edge of your grief? That is, moving your attention right up to the edge of where your grief resides and occurs. Can you imagine now seeing right into the heart of your grief? That is, becoming aware of and directing the focus of your attention right into the heart of your grief. That is, that place where your grief is most intense. Can you imagine now, as you become aware of and keep the focus of your attention right into the heart of your grief, right in that section where it hurts the most, can you imagine bathing yourself and holding the focus of your attention right in the center of your grief, neither resisting nor rejecting the experience of your grief? Can you now imagine opening the focus of your attention such that as you are aware of the intensity of your grief, you simultaneously are aware of this feeling of your feet on the floor, the space in this room. You have an awareness of the person sitting next to you, and you also have the experience of hearing silence. Can you imagine now bringing your attention back to that place where your grief is most intense, right into the core, the center place of your grief, directing your attention right to the pinpoint where your grief causes you the most pain, resting your attention there, bathing yourself, neither resisting nor rejecting your grief. Can you imagine now that as you inhale naturally, your breath flows up through, right through the core of your grief, and equally and simultaneously, can you imagine that as you exhale naturally, your breath flows down and right through the core of your grief and out through your body wherever it wants to go as it dissipates. Can you imagine hearing silence? And as you become aware of the space in which silence exists, can you equally and simultaneously imagine the space in which your thoughts occur, as well as the space within your heart? Can you imagine the distance between your grief and the space in which your waking daydreams occur? Can you imagine the distance between the space in which your grief occurs and arises and exists, and the space where all your sensations of love, joy, bliss, and ecstasy exist? Can you imagine the space inside of your mouth? Is it possible for you to imagine repeating this exercise 2 or more times per day, and equally and simultaneously imagine that upon repetition, your experience will be more intense and beneficial? And when you're ready, please open your eyes. Is everybody back? So, question for the group. Was there anyone here when you started the exercise that their grief was a 7 or above? Anyone? Okay. All right. So several people. All right. For the people where it was a 7 or above, can a couple of you tell me? So can you tell me where is your grief now in terms of a number? Is it less than 7? Slightly. So you notice a shift, okay? And it's better than it was. Okay, good. So I don't know your name.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Olga, and I would say 0. Yeah.
You went to it. So what
0
was
to
this?
1 maybe.
It's gone for you. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me, so tell the group, because this is, I believe, important, because many people are suffering unnecessarily. So could you tell the group, what was the starting number when with your grief?
8.
You were at an 8, okay? That's pretty high. And you're saying in the 7 or 8 minutes or 10 minutes that we did that, your grief went to 0. You know, it's dissolved.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
My name is Laurel, and it went down to probably, I don't know, so about half of that.
Okay, so can you tell me what was your starting
What,
number?
a 7? And it
A
went
7, and so
Yeah.
where is it now? A 4, a
half of
3?
that. Yeah, 4,
A 3.5,
Yeah.
fantastic. Anyone else that, I think Leslie, you pick your hand up.
Yeah, mine dropped a couple, from
Okay.
7 to 5.
7 to 5, okay. Anybody else that had the experience? Okay.
Mine dropped just a bit, maybe 1.
Okay, but where did you start?
Actually, it started at 7.5.
7.5. Technically speaking, right? And so now you're 6.5.
Yeah,
Here's the point,
exactly.
here's the point.
Yeah.
In this 10-minute exercise, think about what just happened. You just did something that you never heard of before, you didn't know if it was gonna work, and it caused a shift, and there's no side effects. And how much did it cost you? Okay, and what I'm saying is, now imagine for someone that has experienced, in the literature it talks about, if you, a person that they are not over the death of a person that was close to them in 6 to 12 months, then they're in some kind of pathological state. So fortunately, the new research is showing that that is an incorrect view, I mean, it took me 40 years to be able to recover. That is way too long. So part of my task, I see, is to help others shift out of it. So my point is that if in 10 minutes you could shift down from 7.5 to 6.5, I believe in your case, that's a significant shift, because that's about the good that you talk about. Okay? How much time do I have left, Leslie?
2 minutes.
Okay, good. So let me open it up if anyone has questions, because anybody have a question? Connie?
Yeah, so, I work with addicts, so there's brain dysfunction that goes on there. Do you see, or have you worked with people who automatically go back to an obsessive state? Because that's their sort of norm, is to be in an obsessive state.
Okay, so my mind just went to 15 different ways I can answer your question. We don't have time for that. All right. So here's the thing. Regardless of what, I just did a series of articles about dual diagnosis when a person has stress, anxiety, grief, chronic pain, okay? And now actually the next series of articles I'm writing is about using tuning forks to help people that have addiction. So let me put it like this. If you're alive, you're going to experience stress. So if you're alive and you have addiction in addition to stress, it's compounded. So this is a statistic that I think you will find helpful. When a person has a dual diagnosis or comorbidity of anxiety and addiction, they found that the research in the meta-studies found that 75%, which is 3 out of 4 persons, the anxiety preceded the addiction. So why does that matter? Because what they found is if you eliminate the anxiety, they don't get addicted. Any other, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay.
Your pain relief techniques, are they similar to what you showed us with the grief?
Yes, because what it is that the way open focus works is that it redirects your attention. Most people don't realize that we're in a chronically narrow focused state, and so that results in chronic pain, etc. So think about it if you hold your hand like this. So this is how most people go through their life. I gotta get it done, and with these devices, right? It's constant. So I'll leave on this note. Oh, before I do that, Leslie, I have to thank Doreen Miller. Where's Doreen? Mala. Okay, see, I mispronounced the name. Okay, all right. I want to thank Doreen because in 2007, Doreen introduced me to the concept of bodily felt sense. And I went down the rabbit hole unexpectedly. So since that time, that it really redirected me to right hemisphere action, brainstem action, and then most people don't realize that when people talk about the gut instincts, because we have a brain down here, and then the biggest brain in our body is actually our skin, which is an organ. It's intelligent. So we don't have time to talk about epigenetics, but I want to thank Leslie for having me. We're Stephen, so I want to thank Stephen because he's been, he drove me home last night. I didn't have to, I can stick around in Maury. So I want to thank you. If anybody has questions, and I just want to let you know, my wife and I do a podcast series called Learn to Live Stress Free, so I hope you'll check us out. I see one other person that has a question. Did I comment?
Actually, it's not a question,
Okay.
but it is a comment. I'm a practitioner of pranayama meditation, and it just reminded me, it's really part of that whole system, especially since you imagine space and so on. It coordinates beautifully.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.